Thank you, Ken. Ken still has 1 minute and 37 seconds, which I was really depending on. Okay, now my timer's, okay, now I'm late. I don't know what to do. Okay, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. To give you just kind of a quick overview of how I'm gonna go, I'm gonna talk for what is gonna feel like far too long. We'll then have a short section where Mark Hura will come up and talk for another section of what feels like quite some time. And then I'll have a bit more details on some financials, and then we'll hand it over to Mike. So we've got a few minutes. At the end of this, there's a few things that I want you to walk away with. I want you to understand the overall growth trajectory of the OCI business. You know, obviously, we've got myself, we've got Mike, we've got Seema, we've got a lot of people. Larry's coming. We're talking about a huge number of our businesses. I'm going to focus right now on the cloud infrastructure business. I'll be talking about the different segments that make up that business. And when I talk about these segments, obviously they're the ways in which we think about them, about how they grow, about who the customers are, about the products that they want, how they consume. So we'll explain that to you. I'll explain what's driving the growth in each of these segments, and also why those customers are choosing to invest more and more with Oracle. The main goal is at the end of this, I think you'll understand why we're so excited about where OCI is at and the great growth prospects that come ahead for OCI. Okay, so these are the slides that Ken talked about. I have to say that you can read them. Those are the slides. And one more. And one more. Now we're done. So, I mentioned different segments. So, you know, this very simple equation of enterprise plus distributed cloud plus cloud natives plus AI infrastructure equals hypergrowth. And I'll go into each of these segments specifically, and I'll talk about, you know, why we break our business up into those segments. The thing to get at a high level, though, is that all of these actually today have very good growth rates, but they're actually accelerating, right? And a big part of the reason why these different segments are all accelerating is because they're symbiotic. And I'll try to take a minute here to explain what I mean by that. Let's say that you have a customer that shows up, and you know, they're an enterprise customer, the traditional customers that you think of when you think of Oracle, right? They have a long history with us. They're a database customer. They also have some of our applications. They might move those things to our cloud. As they do that, one of the things that they want is they want obviously the great functionality that we provide as Oracle. They also want other ISVs. Maybe they want some security products. Maybe they want some new advanced networking features. Well, as Oracle, we don't provide all of that, but we have great partnerships. I'll talk about some of those, but maybe you have a ISV that shows up, and well, they're much more of a cloud native company, and those, the demand from those enterprise customers brings those ISVs to our platform. Right? And those ISVs join, and they can drive more and more overall compute and storage and networking consumption growth, and they're happy because they provide services that our enterprise customers consume. The same thing is true for our distributed cloud customers. The fact that we actually offer not just the public cloud that we have today, but the fact that you know, we go out and we offer our dedicated regions in our Alloy business, that actually becomes an accelerator because our ISVs want that reach. So the fact that we have individual customers, say, you know, in Japan, that are building their own, you know, clouds that they operate and sell to their customers, that also drives things like cloud natives. When our AI infrastructure customers show up, they typically start by consuming, right, raw infrastructure, but they quickly move on up the stack. They start consuming more of our compute, storage, and networking products. They also then move on to start doing things like consuming our applications. So as you look through these segments, we're experiencing, you know, this accelerating growth across all of them, because as each segment on its own starts to grow, it actually helps the others grow faster. Okay, so let's take a look at the enterprise segment. So I think you already understand, you know, what we call enterprises. Here's a great set of logos across the screen. But you know, as I said, traditional companies, most companies have some Oracle, whether it be from database, our applications, our middleware, our industry applications. Those customers are very pleased when they run on top of OCI. So you see the current growth rate, right? 33% year-over-year growth for this segment from Q1 of FY25 to Q1 of FY26. However, contrast that with more than 1,500% growth rate in our multi-cloud database business. So the way to think about this is, up until very recently, you could only get the best of our data platform on one cloud, which was OCI. And we like that cloud, we think it's a great cloud. But we actually have extremely popular data platform services. As of today, you can now get that data platform on all of the cloud providers. And that's why we see this very rapidly growing, right, multi-cloud database business. Okay, a bit more about why there's a margin range here. So when I talk about 65 to 80% as a range for gross margin, the reason for that is actually largely due to the mixture of services that those customers are consuming. So as you can imagine, some customers end up being very, say, networking heavy. And networking, we think our networking is quite good and we have a lot of IP in it, but not nearly as much IP in our networking stack as we do in, say, our database services. And so obviously, based on the differentiation we have in our services, we price them at different margin profiles. And so there's a range of this based on the workloads that a customer brings to us. And then I briefly want to talk about when I say contract to scale. What I mean by this is there's a process that enterprises go through when choosing a cloud. Typically, they do a POC. They try things out for a while. They then move forward. There's a contracting process. And then once that's done, there's also now an implementation phase, right? People don't move their most mission-critical workloads overnight, right? And so as we see, the reason I bring up this contract to scale is that we see it move, the process of moving from initial product launch over to pipeline, and then actually to committed contracts, and then showing up as revenue. That process takes a certain amount of time for these types of customers, given the criticality of the workloads that they're bringing to OCI. Okay. There we go. So a little bit about why they're choosing OCI. Well, the most obvious reason is because it's a combination of our ecosystem. Right? We have cloud infrastructure, but we also have the world's best database with Oracle Autonomous AI Database. We also have amazing applications, both horizontal and vertical, and we'll hear more about that in a few minutes. But even beyond Oracle workloads, OCI is the best platform for enterprise workloads. We built OCI to make it very seamless for you to take an existing enterprise application and move that to our platform. That's very different than building a platform that was designed only for new applications to be written in the cloud. We've been talking a lot about AI this week. We've been talking a lot about the AI data platform that brings together the great work we're doing with our Gen AI models, the work that we're doing with our new AI database, and the work that we're doing with our new agent service, all packaged together as part of our AI data platform. That being available in all of the clouds makes it very easy for customers to pick Oracle as a place to put their data. And then, of course, enterprises do care about performance and they care about price, and OCI is by far the best performance at the lowest price. Okay, so here's an example of a specific customer, NASDAQ. A few years ago, they actually moved Cap Cloud over to OCI and runs exclusively on there. And obviously, far before that, they've been a database customer for a long time. But then more recently, they adopted Oracle Database at AWS, which allows them to then bring their Reg Cloud to their different environments and be able to rely on Exadata across all of their different cloud ecosystem. Okay, so let's now take a minute to talk about our distributed cloud. So when I talk about distributed cloud here, I really mean our dedicated regions and our alloys. So dedicated region is you can get the entire OCI environment as of yesterday in just 3 racks, and you can put that in your own data center. A great example for that is someone like a Vodafone who bought 6 of our dedicated regions to take our full cloud experience and run it right next to their network on premise. The other part of this business that we talk about is our alloy. So as an example, take someone like a NRI that bought dedicated region to begin with, but they're a technology company in Japan. They take our cloud, they add to it their differentiated IP, and they actually can go out and operate in a sovereign way and provide that to their customers in Japan. So as you can see, it's a very good growth rate, right? Growing 77% year over year already. with an average deal size of $67 million. Now here, right, with gross margin is in a range between 40 and 60%. And it's not because these things are just fundamentally less profitable. It goes back to what I said about the enterprise section, which is it's all based on the mix of the services that those people are consuming. So when you have, say, a dedicated region that's almost exclusively used for database, the margin ends up being quite high. But a lot of our dedicated region and Alloy customers, they're consuming a lot of essential infrastructure services, and those have a lower margin profile in general. And then when I talk here about how there's 60 plus dedicated and Alloy regions globally, we have a very large pipeline of this. And look, when someone shows up and they want a dedicated region, there's a time period where there's a time for us to get it to them, there's a time for them to put it in their data center, there's time to ramp it up. But what we've seen is we're planting a lot of these seeds, and as you can see here from this growth rate, this part of our business is growing very rapidly, and the customers keep coming back for more. Okay, why are these people picking our distributed cloud? It's really quite simple. Rather than talking about why our cloud solves their, technologically, their needs are simple. They're typically in a regulated industry, they need sovereign control, or they have things that they either don't or can't move to the public cloud, and they want the benefits of the cloud right next to it. Our distributed cloud offering is actually the only offering that solves these problems. Right? If you go to anywhere else, they have a subset of the cloud, you have to pay a lot of money up front. With us, you can get it in a very small form factor. You sign a universal credits commitment that allows you flexibility on what services you're going to consume. We can deploy it, like I said, in a small footprint very, very rapidly, and no one else offers a turnkey solution. The fact that, as Oracle, we both are in infrastructure and applications, that's something no one else does. And what that actually enables us to do with Alloy is we could not build Alloy and enable someone else to actually operate and run a cloud if we didn't have all the great work that Steve and his team had done with Fusion. So when we talk about Alloy, it's not just OCI, it's OCI plus HCM, plus our ERP system, plus our quoting system, plus Service Cloud. That way we can actually provide a turnkey solution. And then of course, another part of the reason why people like our dedicated regions, and you'll hear Mark talk about this with, I think, some customer examples later, is that when they buy our dedicated region or they buy Alloy, it doesn't just our infrastructure. You can get a dedicated region, and then you can also run our differentiated applications, both horizontal and vertical apps, on that same infrastructure wherever you need it. Okay, so here's an example of eAnd, previously known as Etislot. So they started a few years ago with a dedicated region. They then expanded to have a second dedicated region for disaster recovery. They then expanded by adding GPUs to those dedicated regions. And then most recently, they expanded again by contracting for an Alloy so they can serve sovereign workloads in the UAE. That's an example of how these customers start small, right? We make them extremely happy, and then they continue to grow and scale with us. And as we continue to add more and more of these customers, like I said, this business starts small, but the customers are seeing so much value, they all keep growing and growing and growing. Okay. I promise you I'm not that bad at clicking. All right, cloud natives. So when we talk about cloud natives, the way I think about this is these are typically workloads and customers that have relatively few number of applications that consume a lot of infrastructure, right? ISVs typically fall into this business, but companies that have workloads that are very focused on how do you rapidly scale up and scale down and take advantage of all of the benefits of the cloud. So this segment of our business is growing very rapidly as well, with 49% year-over-year growth from Q1 FY25 to Q1 FY26, with an average deal size of almost $100 million, right? Again, gross margin range of 40 to 60%. A large part of the reason for this comes down to both the service mix that they choose, but also the size and the scale of their business. So as you can imagine, this group can range from relatively big fish to very, very, very large fish, what you might call whales. And as part of that, with that size expectation, you come different expectations around overall pricing. One thing to think about here, though, is that these customers tend to ramp faster. Typically, these customers might have some of their own on-premise. They have a platform that they can move very quickly. Zoom was an example. I don't know if anyone remembers, but COVID hit, and Zoom actually moved from their existing infrastructure as well as in other clouds. They were up and running on OCI in 9 days. And so these are applications that you can ramp very quickly when there's motivation to do so. And so when these customers find out about us, they tend to be very large and they scale very fast. Okay, so why are these customers choosing OCI? Well, primarily it's about best price and performance. And the reason it matters so much to these customers is that typically if you were to take their IT spend, typically for, say, smaller customers, the largest expense for them is labor costs. And their overall infrastructure spend tends to be a tiny portion. For these types of customers, by far and away, the biggest expense for them is the actual infrastructure. And that's why having the best price performance and being the most secure matters to them. We also work with these customers through a combination of engineering partnerships. And Mark will explain a bit more about this in a minute. It's not enough that we just say, hey, here's what's on the truck. All of them, given their scale and their unique business, they might have some features they need. They might have some customizations they want of different hardware we haven't considered before. And the fact that as Oracle, we can actually go work with them, figure out how to implement all of that in a standardized way, right? Because what's important when we do this is that we don't fork our cloud where there's like an Uber cloud, which is different than a TikTok cloud, which is different than an OpenAI cloud. We need to have one cloud that everyone can use, and it's our job to go in and put those features and functionality into the base product. There's really important reasons why those customers are choosing us. It's really about those deep engineering relationships. Okay, so an example of one of these companies is Cybereason. As I mentioned, they picked us because of our focus on performance, efficiency, and security. Cybereason is a security company that focuses on endpoint protection. They have an amazing platform. They tested our platform, and then they quickly migrated a significant chunk of their infrastructure from GCP over to OCI. The reason for that is that moving to OCI saved them more than 40% on their overall infrastructure spend, which directly goes to their bottom line given the type of business that they have and the scale at which they're growing. Okay, so now I want to talk a bit more about AI infrastructure. So when I talk about AI infrastructure, AI means many different things. Here I'm really talking about companies that want accelerators for either doing training or reasoning. Both fit into this category. We have a lot of these customers, right? If you take a look here, when we say that there's more than 700 of these customers consuming on our platform, that doesn't mean there's 700 customers using AI, just to be clear, right? You hear Mike talk about it. We have thousands and thousands of customers using AI on our platform. This is people who show up and go, no, I want some type of accelerated computing, whether it be an NVIDIA GPU or an AMD GPU, or as we're rolling out different accelerators, any type of accelerated hardware, that's all we're counting for you to fit into this category. This, as you can imagine, is growing very rapidly, right? 117% year-over-year growth in overall annualized consumed revenue. The margin is different. And the reason for the margin range here is less to do with product mix, because in general, these customers actually are pretty well defined on which types of products they want. A lot of it comes down to the location and how efficient we can be. Sorry about that. So as an example, as we continue to be more and more efficient, as we can go in and design better networks, as we can optimize our data center build out, as we can do things like power capping, that then allows us to have a higher margin. And in some cases, the other part of the reason for the margin range is obviously, just like I talked about with cloud natives, there's customers of different sizes, right? Typically, these customers are relatively large to begin with, although there's a lot of very small ones, but they can scale extremely high, as I think all of you know. Okay, so why they're picking OCI? Well, part of it is that we move very quickly. We move quickly when things are stood up, but we also move even more quickly before things exist. So our ability to rapidly deliver the latest in the accelerators. Networking matters a lot, right? Fundamentally, when people are buying a cluster, like yes, the actual accelerator matters, but all of these workloads are operating in a clustered fashion. That's true across training especially, but even for inferencing, all of these inferencing is happening at a cluster level. And then the fact that we actually have extremely efficient data center designs that allow us to optimize our power usage, which then translates into either more power available for them or lower costs. And then it's not enough to just be really good at compute and networking. Storage is also critically important because these clusters are doing something with data, whether that be for training runs or for inferencing. They need access to a huge amount of context for these models to be valuable. All right, so this is a slide of an example deal. I'm going to walk you through all of the different details. So as an example, let's imagine that somebody shows up and they want to buy, approximately a gigawatt of GPU accelerators, right? And they sign a contract for 6 years, which would be 6 years at $10 billion a year. It's a $60 billion TCV. Okay. Now, here I've broken the costs we have into two sections. One is what I'm calling land, data center, and power. That's obviously the buildings, it's the actual power generation, it's the people costs to run that portion of the business, right? That ends up being about 35% of the cost to deliver that service. Now, if you add up compute, networking, and storage, right, all the things that you put inside of that data center, that ends up being about 65% of the costs. Okay, so when, say this deal is contracted and you have to build a data center from scratch, well, we actually align through the contracts that we do and the way in which we align our overall delivery. We don't pay for land, data center, and power until it's actually delivered to us, okay? So let's say it takes you a year to build a data center. During that year, we're not paying for anything. Now there's a point at which, and that's highlighted in this kind of left section before year one here, where the data center is working, and it's our job as Oracle to put all of the compute, storage, and networking inside of it, all right? During that time period, there's a cost where we're paying for something, but we're not making revenue yet, right? And as we can reduce that time, if I can go from 3 months to 2 months to 1 month, the amount of time that I'm paying for something that I'm not able to then provide to a customer goes way down, right? So in this example of this example deal of $60 billion, I've written down here, okay, a 35% margin deal, right in the middle of that 30 to 40% margin range. But the thing to understand is when I talk about this 35% margin, it doesn't just include each year after it's running. That 35% includes, right, the fact that there's a startup cost up front. Now, obviously, if you can imagine if you were to put a demarcation line before year one starts, we have an expense with no compensating revenue yet. And that can be happening across many different sites, right? We're building not one of these things, we're building 10, 20 of them at a time. And based on the delivery schedule, right, and our ability to ramp and put the capacity in there, you've got a waterfall across many of these different pieces of infrastructure where some are now starting up, some are now giving you a ton of cash flow off. And part of the job that we do is we're constantly laying those things together to understand how our overall business works. So, key takeaways from this slide. We spend a lot of our energy aligning our revenue and our expenses. The ramp-up time for this stuff has cost, but it's minimal and it's something that we're continually optimizing. And the expense of that ramp-up is included in the gross margin. So when I talk about, hey, here's the gross margin range of one of these customers, we don't go in and assume, right, that, oh, no, you're not counting for these ramp-up expenses. The gross margin includes the assumptions around those ramp-up expenses. Okay, next. I've been talking to a lot of different customers and investors and reporters and analysts about, okay, how do we actually go out and we accelerate and scale this build-out? Fundamentally, there is no problem. It's really just an opportunity for us to grow faster, right? It's not, there's no issue. There's just opportunities the way I see it. So when I think about what a huge amount of my time and energy goes into, it's about how do we actually enable ourselves and the industry to grow faster given the unprecedented demand we're seeing for infrastructure like this. And the way that we're growing faster is that we're actually pulling together. The entire industry is coming together across data center providers, energy providers, hardware providers, and capital providers. This is already happening all day, every day, right? You see constant announcements of new business models being created, of different ways to go out and minimize risk and grow this business faster. That's actually what's enabling the current growth, And I think you're going to continue to see from us and others new models that are created to actually help grow this business faster and faster. And so, to understand the result of what happens when all of these partnerships come together, let's take a look at a video to see what's actually possible. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of just walk you through a few pictures about the video that we just saw to give you some more context. So this is a site in Abilene, Texas. It's 1,100 acres across 8 total buildings. So what you're looking at right here, that weird kind of quad thing with this thing in the middle, that's actually what we call one building. I know to me, it kind of looks like 5 buildings, but it turns out that apparently we just don't have enough numbers. We couldn't get to that. Each of those individual pieces are data halls that are all part of one building. In this location, there are more than 6,400 construction workers on site every day. And once we're complete with this campus, we'll provide nearly 1,700 jobs, direct jobs, and even more indirect jobs. So on site, we have both grid power, and there's an existing substation as well as a new 1 gigawatt substation that's going in. But in addition to that, there's also 300 megawatts of gas turbines that are installed to provide power to some of the initial buildings and also as partial backup power for the site. Okay. So we started building this in May of 2024, and the entire campus will be completed in the middle of next year. The workloads for the customer for this site, which is OpenAI in the beginning, went live less than a year after the construction started. Each of these buildings is actually mechanically isolated. They're all networked together. So in that giant campus, all of these buildings are actually through a massive set of interconnections, both within the buildings as well as through very secure fiber between them that actually allows the entire cluster to function together as one giant supercluster. And once this is finalized, as of right now, this will be the largest supercomputer that's ever constructed. Okay. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the details of data centers, but liquid cooling is something that's existed for a long time, but has really gone from 0 to 100 very, very quickly. Liquid cooling, so these big pipes are actually the cooling liquid that then go in to cool these accelerators. Sometimes people ask about, well, what about the water? Does this use a lot of water? The reality is no. This water is in a closed loop system. The actual annual consumption for each one of those buildings that you saw there, which is quite large and is 100 megawatts of power, actually consumes less water per year than a single family home in the same region. Obviously, you have a lot of water when you first start it up. You have to fill up the swimming pool, but because it's not evaporating all the time, it's a closed loop system. Okay, so an example of a customer that is choosing us for AI infrastructure. This is Modal Labs. They provide a developer platform for AI, ML, and inferencing. They enable customers to easily fine-tune and do batch processing for AI workloads. They choose us because we have amazing infrastructure. We have the best bare metal compute available, and they really appreciate the price performance advantages that we have combined with our excellent networking. And then what I want to do now is take a few minutes. I'm going to bring Mark Hura up to the stage, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of our customers and why they are choosing OCI across all these different segments. And at the end, I'll give a little bit more details on where we see OCI going over the next few years. Mark? Thanks, man.
Thanks, Clay.
Are we,
Great.
I'm gonna go left. I'll go middle. You go left.
All right.
We didn't arrange that yet.
No.
Okay. I did my job is really very easy. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Clay.
We have many segments of businesses.
We do.
Let's talk about enterprise. Why are enterprise customers choosing OCI? And give us some examples of what it's like working with us.
Yeah. So, you gave some examples before in terms of why enterprise customers choose Oracle, and that has been our bread and butter for so many years around customers that have deployed Oracle applications, Oracle databases throughout their entire businesses. But then when we think about OCI and how we've defined and developed and deployed a differentiated cloud that serves many different types of workloads. And for enterprises, we think about 3 different major categories. One is enterprise customers that have been utilizing Oracle applications and databases that serve either our applications, third-party applications, custom-built applications, or large-scale enterprise data warehouses. And those are customers that take advantage of the price, performance, and capability that we have in OCI, and I'll give some examples there. The second category is that customers that are looking to exit their data centers and their workloads. And what we have found is that many other clouds require you to redefine and build those applications in a new way to fit onto their cloud. So it becomes a constraint for our customers that are looking to take advantage of what a true cloud can do for their business. And then the third is really bringing pure infrastructure, compute, storage, networking capabilities to enterprise customers that are taking advantage of raw infrastructure capabilities. Those are 3 distinct areas of why we're winning, how we're winning, and how we're engaging with our enterprise customers all around the world. And if you think about that first category, an example such as Emerson, they've looked to build and move their entire Oracle EBS infrastructure while they're migrating to Fusion. But in doing so, they brought the enterprise data warehouse and all of their Oracle databases to our cloud. In doing so, they also, what's unique and what we found, all of the boundary applications that support that supply chain, right, that financial system, all come into OCI, allowing them to exit their data center, get the performance capability while they start to transform to Fusion at the same time. And so it's a great example of how we support our customers, bringing together the power of the capability of OCI, the performance, for them to be able to improve the performance and the speed for their end users around the applications that they're serving. Clarative is another example where they were living under the constraint of another provider telling them they had to re-platform before they moved to the cloud. And the cloud that you designed, Clay, which is bare metal from the core, right, with off-box virtualization and flexible compute for our customers to be able to pick up the VMs that they have and exit that data center without having to re-platform, allowing them to focus on the things that are most important for them around delivering services to their customers. And when we think about just bringing pure infrastructure to our customers, in the enterprise, we have so many examples, but one that may be different and unique is like Goldman Sachs, right? Taking advantage of bringing high-performance computing capability to do risk analysis in their business. And we weren't their original provider, but we are a critical provider of services to them now, where they had to take an opportunity to look at what it meant in OCI and how we were executing and delivering compute capabilities for them and how they were used to doing it before. And the results were staggering in terms of the price, performance, and capability that they were able to get. And it doesn't have any Oracle databases that they're running in that environment. So there's multiple examples of native VMs and entire data center capabilities, Oracle applications and our entire data platform capabilities for customers, or pure infrastructure around enterprises.
Okay, well, Mark, I agree with you, great examples. I also kind of explained a bit about our distributed cloud customers, and I used a few examples already. But I think there's probably an example that is more surprising and also a bit different than the traditional telco or MSP type workload. Yeah. Tell us more about some distributed cloud customers.
So, I think there's an obvious point, which is sovereign, security, highly regulated industries, banking, healthcare, utilities, that can take advantage of a distributed cloud, bringing it to them in terms of the industries that they're serving. But what's also unique about our distributed cloud, it is our full cloud, which means our customers can take advantage of running our full suite of capabilities. Meta, as an example. Before we get into thinking about infrastructure at scale in training and inferencing, Meta is a user of Fusion, where we've deployed a dedicated cloud at Meta's facilities where they run Fusion to run their back office of their business. And so we have the capability not only to bring infrastructure to our customers, but the ability to run our full suite of industry applications as well as data layers for our customers. So it's a different example. It's a unique example that our customers can take advantage of wherever they deploy.
Okay, so we got enterprise, distributed cloud.
Sure.
What about cloud natives?
Cloud natives. I mean, cloud natives has been a wonderful spot to truly bring the capability of a next-gen cloud to the industry. And you brought up an example around cyber reason. What we have found is these patterns of success that have continued in a variety of different industry segments for cloud natives. Cyber reason is one example, but many security companies are running on OCI, right? Whether it's Palo Alto, CrowdStrike, Commvault, Sentinel, Fortinet, and on and on and on. And there's a reason why, right? As you mentioned before, there's certain types of workloads where we perform at a higher level than where the industry is. And whether that's the networking requirements from a security company of how they're protecting others, or whether it's the compute intensity that they're leveraging to scale up, scale down, to run their businesses efficiently, to protect what they're providing to their users. And it's a great example of thinking around, wait a second, if the security companies are running on OCI is the most performant and most secure cloud out there, well, that makes a lot of sense. In addition to that, we see a lot of ISVs that come to OCI as well. It's an opportunity where we become a critical part of their cost of goods that they provide. And the technical differentiation that we have and the partnership that we bring to our ISVs is unmatched, where we are working with them to optimize the workloads for OCI to allow them to focus on delivering the services that they bring to their customers, so that we are a critical part of their success. But most importantly is it's a highly engineered engagement with the ISVs, and it's unmatched in terms of the performance.
Okay, so I had Peter from OpenAI on stage with me yesterday.
Yes.
He was very complimentary to your team. And then we just talked about modal. Give everybody here a little bit more perspective on why we're doing so well in AI infrastructure and why those customers are choosing us.
Yeah, AI infrastructure, and when we really started in this space many years ago, I recall a distinct conversation when we were working with NVIDIA, actually, around NVIDIA needing to run their workloads in a cloud. And engaging directly with Jensen, and what he said is, wow, I'd have never thought I would see this, but Oracle, you are fast, you are highly technical, right? And you are incredibly capable from an engineering perspective. And he said, never lose that advantage. It wasn't necessarily something that always aligned in terms of what he thought in the past. And for us, it's something that we just continue to operate with all of the customers that are taking advantage of our AI infrastructure that we're building. Our teams are incredibly fast. We know what we're really good at. We're highly technical, and then we provide a white glove service for our customers that is a 24/7 engagement. And what we constantly hear over and over again is that we are the best to work with, and we're the easiest in terms of operating. And what happens is this is a pretty tight community, and it spreads very quickly. So as the early stage companies that we started with, they were telling our story to others, and it's just continued to snowball from there. And obviously we have the largest of the largest AI companies from running infrastructure in the world today. And so, again, highly technical. We don't waste anybody's time. We know what we're really good at, and the speed is unmatched.
No, Mark, thank you. I think
Thanks,
it's a great summary of why people are choosing OCI. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
All right. So this is the long-range plan that we provided on our September 9th earnings call, just I guess it was last month, technically. The thing to understand about this is that when I talk about this business, all these different segments are included in this. So this projection about future revenue includes all of these business segments that I'm talking about. The other thing I want you to understand is that when we talk to you about these types of projections, they're projections that we believe in. We have very real reasons across each of these segments that across all of these plans that add up together to provide this kind of projection. The other thing to understand a little bit, and I'll go into it a bit more in a second, is that for some segments of our business, there really are actually supply constrained, not demand constrained, specifically AI infrastructure. And I'll talk about what that means and why you're seeing the changes from us that we're making in the industry. So, to give you some context here, in 30 days during this quarter, 30 contiguous days, we contracted for $65 billion of additional commitment across infrastructure contracts. Now, across those, it was across 7 different contracts from 4 different customers. None of those customers are OpenAI. I know some people are questioning sometimes, hey, is it just OpenAI? The reality is we think OpenAI is a great customer, but we have many customers. One of these customers is Meta. And as I share these numbers with you, this is not all of our contract. This is not saying, hey, we didn't add up all of the deals. This is literally 7 deals, 4 customers, all of them other than OpenAI. And it shows the diversity of our customers and the size of their interest in our business. Okay, so as I mentioned before, most people are assuming that we are demand constrained, but we're not. We're actually supply constrained. And the thing to understand here is that a large part of what I spend my time doing is securing what I consider to be good supply. I'll give you an example of an email I received recently. There was a very nice person who lives in Nebraska who has a cornfield. They said that they think that would be a really good place to put an AI data center. And you're probably laughing, but I receive, so you cannot imagine the amount of reach outs that come my way in the way of my team. It's actually quite a hard job to filter through all of the opportunities and to understand which ones bring together the energy that you need, the hardware capacity that you need, the land that you need, and the capital that you need. Our job is to put together all of those pieces, and only then does that result in supply. And so what we find is that when we actually have good answers around supply in the reasonable time frame, customers then contract very quickly. So, when we talk about the business that we're doing, it's not that I have this infinite supply over here of options and I spend all of my time going to customers asking, hey, would you possibly want this? Instead, the customers have come to us saying, we would like a lot of stuff. And our job is to go find actual good supply that we can accelerate and deliver on the timeline that they need. That is what we do all the time. And once we have that done, suddenly the customers contract very quickly, and we're contracting with all of the different suppliers to bring together these pieces so we can execute as quickly as possible. So as part of that, we are updating our long-range plan between now and our fiscal year 30. Again, the reason we're updating this is exactly for what I showed you 2 slides ago. As we find ourselves able to execute our supply constraints, as we actually can go in, we have customers that want that. And that's part of the reason too, and you see the change in these numbers, that it's a little bit easier for us to find supply, not this year or next year, but in subsequent years. So as we're able to find that supply, customers contract for it, we see immense demand, and then we go about delivering that to customers. Okay, the other thing I want people to understand is that I talked about these different segments, and obviously the numbers we just talked about was the all-up number for OCI. But we're also extremely focused on our AI database and our AI data platform business. We are very confident in our ability to grow this very rapidly. Now, there's a few reasons for that. One of them is, up until recently, as I mentioned before, there was only one cloud selling our AI database and our AI data platform, and now we've transitioned to all of them. The other reason we're very confident in this projection, you'll hear more about that from Larry later today, is the huge investments that we're making into AI, into building out our AI data platform, only makes the previous investments we have and our customers have made into our database that much more valuable. So as we go through this next period over a few years, we're rapidly accelerating our cloud database and our AI data platform business. And this is it's amazing for us to see, right? A business that is such high margin, that's so valuable to our customers, grow so very quickly. So with that, I'm out of time, and I'm going to hand it over, I think, to Mike, and he's going to talk to you about applications. Thank you very much.